Welcome to sleepy Japan. Tonight, we drift together into a quiet story from Japan, a tale shaped by stillness, tradition, and the soft rhythm of night. Before we begin, take a slow breath in and exhale gently. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your hands rest. Let your thoughts begin to settle as the world around you softens into calm. Imagine a peaceful evening, light from a simple paper lantern drifting across the room, a cool breeze moving just beyond the window. And in the distance, a single temple bell echoing through the night. Each sound carries you deeper into rest. There is nothing you need to do now, nowhere you need to be. Just breathe and let the night open gently around you. Feel peace moving through your body, from your chest to your shoulders, to the quiet rhythm of your breath. The world outside grows silent. Only the sound of your breathing remains, and the soft promise of dreams waiting to unfold. Now, as the moon rises above the hills and the night deepens, let us begin tonight's story. The Tongue-Cut Sparrow. There was a time, long ago, when the world moved more slowly, when each season announced itself through the gentlest whispers of wind and leaf, when people knew the language of birds and the secrets folded into morning mist. In those days, in a small village nestled between mountains whose peaks touched the clouds, there lived an old man and an old woman in a modest house with walls of weathered wood and a roof of thatch that rustled softly in the breeze. The old man had a heart as wide as the valley, as gentle as the first light of dawn breaking over the eastern hills. His face was lined with the years, each crease a story, each wrinkle a memory of kindness given and received. He moved through the world with quiet grace, noticing small things, the way morning dew collected on a spider's web, the particular angle of sunlight that made the rice fields glow like molten gold, the soft breathing of the earth as it turned from season to season. The old woman, by contrast, had grown hard with age, as though life had taken something precious from her long ago, and left only bitterness in its place. Her voice was sharp, her movements quick with irritation, and she found fault with everything. But the old man kept to his gentle ways, tending his small garden, walking the mountain paths, speaking softly to the creatures he encountered along the way. He believed, as his grandfather had taught him, that every living thing carried a spark of the divine, that kindness was a form of prayer, and that cruelty diminished not only its victim, but also the one who wielded it. One spring morning, when the cherry blossoms were just beginning to unfurl their petals, like tiny hands opening to receive the sun's blessing, the old man found a young sparrow beneath the eaves of his house. The bird was newly fledged, its feathers still downy and soft, its eyes bright with the newness of the world. Perhaps it had fallen from its nest, or perhaps its parents had been taken by a hawk or cat. Whatever the reason, there it was, trembling and alone, chirping softly in a voice like a single raindrop falling on still water. The old man's heart opened at once. He cupped his weathered hands around the tiny creature, feeling its rapid heartbeat against his palms, and brought it inside. He fashioned a small nest from dried grasses and soft cloth, placing it in a corner where the morning sun would warm it gently. He gave the sparrow seeds and grains, tiny portions of millet and rice, drops of water from his fingertip. He spoke to it in the language of kindness, telling it stories of the mountains and the seasons. The sparrow grew stronger under his care, its feathers gaining their full colours, soft browns and greys, with a touch of white beneath its chin. It would hop from the old man's shoulder to his hand, tilting its small head to listen as he spoke, answering with chirps that seemed almost like a conversation. The bird became his companion, following him as he worked in the garden, perching on the rim of his teacup in the evenings, singing its small songs to greet the morning and bid farewell to the day. The old woman tolerated the bird, though she saw it only as another mouth to feed, another thing that required attention she was unwilling to give. She would mutter and complain when the sparrow flew through the house, when its songs woke her in the early hours. The seasons turned, as they always do, with the patient inevitability of water flowing downhill. Summer came with its heavy heat and droning cicadas. Autumn painted the mountains in shades of crimson and gold. Winter laid its quiet blanket of snow across the world. Through it all, the old man cared for his sparrow, and the sparrow brought light into his days. Then came a day in late winter, when the plum blossoms were just beginning to show their first brave blooms, promising spring's eventual return. The old man had gone up into the mountains to gather firewood, as was his custom. While he was gone, the old woman was at home, preparing to starch her linen. She had made a paste from rice flour, mixing it carefully until it reached just the right consistency. She left it in a bowl on the low table, while she stepped outside to attend to some other task. The sparrow, left alone in the house, hopped from its perch and discovered the bowl of paste. To a small bird, it must have looked like food, white and soft, with a faint, sweet smell. The sparrow pecked at it, tasting, eating, driven by the simple hunger that moves all living things. It ate and ate until the bowl was nearly empty. When the old woman returned and saw what had happened, something dark and terrible rose up inside her. All the accumulated frustrations of her life, all the disappointments and resentments, all the hardness she had cultivated like a bitter crop, all of it focused on this small bird in this single moment. Her face twisted with rage. She seized the sparrow roughly, her fingers closing around its fragile body. The bird struggled and chirped in fear, but she paid no heed. "You thief!" she shrieked. "You worthless creature!" And in her fury, she took up scissors and she cut the sparrow's tongue. The poor bird cried out in pain, a sound like winter wind through bare branches, like something precious breaking, like innocence betrayed. Then the old woman opened her hands and cast the sparrow out into the cold air. "Go!" she shouted. "Go and never return." The sparrow, wounded and terrified, flew away into the grey sky, disappearing among the bare trees and snowy peaks, carrying with it the pain of betrayal and the memory of the old man's kindness, which now seemed as distant as spring. When the old man returned home that evening, his arms laden with firewood, his heart full of the mountain's peace. He called out his usual greeting to his small friend. "Mr. Sparrow, I have returned. Where are you, my friend?" But there was only silence. The house felt different, emptier, as though something vital had been removed from it. "Where is the sparrow?" he asked his wife, though some part of him already knew. The old woman turned away, her voice hard and defensive. "I let it go," she said flatly. "The worthless thing stole my starching paste, ate it all up. So I cut its tongue to teach it a lesson, and I let it go." The old man stood very still, the firewood sliding from his arms to clatter on the floor. For a long moment, he could not speak. When he finally found his voice, it was barely more than a whisper, rough with grief. "You cut its tongue." The old man sank down onto the tatami mat, his head bowing with sorrow. He thought of the small bird that had trusted him, that had eaten from his hand, that had sung its songs to brighten his days. He thought of it now, somewhere out in the cold world, wounded and alone, unable to sing, unable to call out, its small voice silenced forever. "Oh, my poor sparrow," he murmured, his voice breaking. "Where have you gone? Where is your home now?" He could not sleep that night. He lay awake, listening to the wind, imagining he heard the sparrow's voice among its sighs. By morning, his decision was made. He would go and search for the sparrow. He would find his small friend and beg its forgiveness. He rose before dawn, prepared a small bundle of food and a gourd of water, and told his wife he was going to search for the sparrow. She scoffed and waved him away, but he paid her no mind. The old man walked through the village as the first light touched the mountains, painting their peaks in shades of rose and gold. He walked past the houses where smoke was just beginning to rise from morning fires, past the fields where farmers were already at work, past the small shrine where he paused to offer a prayer for guidance. Then he continued on, into the foothills, calling out as he went, "Mr. Sparrow, Mr. Sparrow, where are you living?" His voice echoed back to him from the mountains, but no answer came. He walked through groves of cedar and pine, their needles carpeting the ground in soft layers of rust and amber. He walked beside streams still edged with ice, their water singing its eternal song. He walked through meadows where last year's grasses stood brittle and pale, waiting for spring's renewal. Days passed, then weeks. The old man searched tirelessly, sleeping beneath trees when darkness fell, washing his face in cold streams each morning. He grew thinner, more weathered, but his determination never wavered. Each morning he resumed his search, calling out the sparrow's name, hoping against hope for some sign, some answer. The world around him began to change as he walked. Winter's grip slowly loosened. Buds appeared on the trees, tentative at first, then swelling with life. The streams grew fuller with snowmelt from the peaks. Birds began to return from their southern journeys, filling the air with songs of territory and courtship, and the simple joy of spring. One afternoon, when the old man had been searching for nearly a month, he came to a place he did not recognize, a mountain valley so beautiful it seemed to belong to another world. Cherry trees grew here in abundance, their branches just beginning to show color, promising an extravagance of blossoms to come. A small stream wound through the valley, its water clear as glass, and the air was filled with the sound of birdsong. Thousands of birds, it seemed, singing all at once. The old man stood at the entrance to this valley, his heart lifting for the first time since his sparrow had disappeared. There was something about this place, something peaceful and welcoming. "Mr. Sparrow," he called out once more, his voice hoarse from weeks of calling. "Where are you living?" And this time, miraculously, an answer came, a familiar chirping, a sound he would know anywhere. And then he saw it, his sparrow, flying toward him through the cherry branches, its wings catching the light. The old man's eyes filled with tears. He held out his hand, and the sparrow landed on his palm, just as it had done so many times before. They looked at each other, man and bird, and in that moment, all the sorrow of separation was transformed into the joy of reunion. "You are alive," the old man whispered. "You survived. Oh, my friend, I am so sorry for what was done to you." The sparrow chirped softly, a sound that could not form words anymore, but that conveyed understanding, forgiveness, and welcome. Then it took flight again, circling the old man's head, and began to lead him deeper into the valley. They walked together, the old man and the sparrow, following the stream into the heart of the valley. The cherry trees grew denser here, their branches intertwining overhead to create a canopy that filtered the sunlight into patterns of gold and shadow. The air was filled with petals, the first blossoms beginning to fall, drifting down like snow, like blessings, like soft answers to questions the old man had not known how to ask. At last, they came to a house, small and perfect, built in the traditional style. It seemed to grow naturally from the landscape, as though it had always been there, as though the valley itself had dreamed it into being. The sparrow flew to the entrance and waited, looking back at the old man with bright, intelligent eyes. The old man approached slowly, respectfully, sensing that this was a place of significance, perhaps even a place of magic. As he neared the house, the sliding door opened, and out came not one sparrow, but many, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, each one bowing in the manner of polite greeting, each one chirping a welcome. And among them was his sparrow, no longer alone and wounded, but surrounded by family, by community, by love. The old man understood then that his small friend had not simply survived. It had found its way home to its true family, to a place where it belonged, where it was valued and cherished. A larger sparrow, sleek and elegant, approached the old man. This was clearly the head of the household, moving with dignity and grace. It bowed low, and the old man bowed in return. Then, to the old man's amazement, the sparrows began to transform. The air shimmered around them, and suddenly they were no longer just birds, but something more, spirits, perhaps, or enchanted beings, who could take form as birds when they wished, but who had another nature entirely. The sparrow he had cared for stepped forward and spoke, its voice now clear despite the missing tongue, for this was a place where such injuries held no power. "Honored elder," the sparrow said, "you have come far to find me. Your kindness has not been forgotten. When I was cast out, wounded and alone, I flew until I found my way back to this place, my ancestral home, where my family has lived for generations beyond counting. They tended my wound and welcomed me back, and I have been healing here, both in body and in spirit. The old man's eyes filled with tears again, but these were tears of relief and joy. I am so grateful you are safe, he said. I am so sorry for what happened to you in my home. You would have prevented it, the sparrow interrupted gently. This I know. You have always been kind, always been gentle. The cruelty was not yours, and I hold no anger toward you. Only gratitude for the care you showed me when I needed it most. Then the largest sparrow, the father of the household, stepped forward and spoke in a voice like wind through pine needles. You are welcome here, honored guest. Please, come inside and rest. You have traveled far and suffered much in your search. Allow us to show you hospitality, as you showed hospitality to our young one when it was in need. The old man was led into the house, and what he saw there took his breath away. The interior was more spacious than the exterior suggested. Room after room opening into other rooms, each one more beautiful than the last. The tatami mats were perfectly woven, the shoji screens painted with scenes of mountains and water and sky. Low tables were set with dishes that gleamed like moonlight, and the air was filled with the scent of cherry blossoms and green tea, and something else, something like happiness itself, given fragrance. They seated him in the place of honor, and brought him tea in a cup so delicate. He feared it might dissolve in his hands like morning mist. The tea was the finest he had ever tasted, with flavors that seemed to contain entire seasons. Then came the food, course after course, each one more exquisite than the last. Rice that gleamed like pearls, each grain perfect. Vegetables that tasted as though they had been grown in paradise. Soups clear as mountain streams. Broths that seemed to nourish not just the body, but the soul. Throughout the meal, the sparrow family attended to his every need, refilling his cup before it was empty, offering new dishes as soon as he finished the previous ones, entertaining him with gentle conversation and stories. The old man listened and ate, and felt his spirit being restored. All the weariness of his long search, all the sorrow of separation, all the grief over his sparrow's injury, all of it was being washed away by this generous hospitality, this unexpected grace. He felt young again, or, if not young, then ageless, as though he had stepped out of the stream of time and into some eternal moment where loss and pain had no power. The days passed in this way, though the old man lost track of how many. Time moved differently here, or perhaps it did not move at all, simply existed in an eternal present, where each moment was complete in itself. He slept on futons soft as clouds, woke to the sound of birds singing, spent his days in conversation and contemplation, walked through the valley where cherry blossoms now bloomed in impossible profusion, their petals falling like benedictions. The sparrow he had cared for was often at his side, no longer wounded but whole, its voice restored even though its tongue remained cut. For in this place, the old man came to understand. It was the spirit that spoke, not the flesh. They talked about many things, about the nature of kindness and cruelty, about the meaning of home, about the way suffering can lead to unexpected destinations. I have learned, the sparrow told him one evening, as they sat beside the stream watching the water flow past, that cruelty can wound but cannot destroy what is essential. The old woman cut my tongue, but she could not cut my voice, for voice comes from deeper than flesh. And because she sent me away, I found my way back to this place, back to my family, back to a home I had forgotten I had. The old man nodded slowly, understanding but still grieving. Still, he said, kindness is better. Kindness is always better. Yes, the sparrow agreed, kindness is always better. And it is kindness that we remember, kindness that echoes through time, kindness that transforms the world. Your kindness to me is written in a language that cannot be erased. At last, though, the old man knew it was time to return to his own world, as much as he had come to love this valley, this house, this timeless place of peace and beauty. He belonged to the world of seasons and change, of aging and mortality. He could not stay here forever, no matter how tempting it was to try. When he announced his intention to leave, the entire Sparrow family gathered to bid him farewell. They had prepared a feast even more elaborate than the one that had welcomed him, and they pressed gift after gift upon him. Finally, the father sparrow brought forth 2 wicker baskets, beautifully woven, sealed with paper and cord. One basket was large and heavy, so heavy that the old man could barely imagine lifting it. The other was smaller and light, almost seeming to float in the sparrow's hands. "Please," the father sparrow said, "accept one of these as a parting gift, a token of our gratitude for the kindness you showed our young one, and for the honor of your company these many days." The old man looked at the 2 baskets, and though his curiosity was stirred, his humility and self-knowledge made his choice simple. He was old, his back bent with years, his strength not what it had once been. How could he possibly carry the heavy basket all the way back down the mountain to his home? "I am grateful for any gift," he said, bowing low, "but I am an old man, and my strength is not great. Please allow me to accept the lighter basket, which I can carry without difficulty." The sparrows seemed pleased by his choice, though they said nothing to indicate why. They helped him shoulder the light basket, tying it securely so it would not slip as he walked. Then they accompanied him to the edge of the valley, the whole family coming to see him off, calling out their thanks and good wishes, their voices blending into a chorus that sounded like all the birds of spring singing at once. The old man turned at the boundary of the valley to look back one last time. The cherry trees were in full bloom now, a sea of pink and white, and beneath them the sparrows had returned to their bird forms, a great flock of them, wheeling and diving in patterns that seemed to write blessings in the air. He bowed deeply to them, then turned and began his journey home. The path back seemed shorter than the path there had been, as though the mountain itself was helping him, easing his way. He walked through the afternoon and into the evening, and as night fell, he found himself already at the edge of the village, amazed at how quickly he had travelled. When he reached his house, he found it just as he had left it, though covered now with the dust of his long absence. The old woman was inside, and when she heard the door slide open, she looked up sharply. "So you've returned," she said. "I thought you might have died out there, searching for that worthless bird." "I found it," the old man said quietly. and I have been a guest in its home, treated with kindness and hospitality beyond measure." The old woman's eyes narrowed, taking in his travel-worn appearance, the wicker basket on his back. "What's that you're carrying?" she demanded. "A parting gift," the old man said, "from the Sparrow family." He slipped the basket from his shoulders and set it down carefully on the floor. "Well, open it then," the old woman said, her voice sharp with sudden interest, sudden greed. "Let's see what kind of gift a sparrow would give." The old man untied the cords that sealed the basket and lifted the lid. And as he did, the room filled with light, golden light, silver light, light that seemed to carry within it all the colours of dawn and sunset simultaneously. Inside the basket were treasures beyond imagination, gold coins that gleamed like small suns, silver ingots carved with auspicious symbols, jewels that caught the lamplight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. There were bolts of silk in colours no dyer had ever achieved, porcelain vessels so fine they were almost transparent, jade carvings of mountains and dragons and phoenixes. The old man and woman stood staring at the treasure, struck silent by its magnificence. Here was wealth enough to transform their lives, to ensure comfort and security for all their remaining days. But while the old man felt only a quiet gratitude for this unexpected generosity, the old woman's mind was turning in a very different direction. Her eyes gleamed with avarice as she calculated the value of what lay before her. And then an even more dangerous thought took hold. "If the light basket contained all this," she said slowly, "imagine what must be in the heavy one." The old man looked at her, seeing where her thoughts were leading, feeling a deep unease settle in his chest. "The light basket was all I could carry," he said, "and it has given us more than enough. We should be grateful for what we have received, not greedy for more." But the old woman waved his words away impatiently. "You are always too meek, too easily satisfied," she said. "I am going to go and get that other basket. Tell me how to find this sparrow house." The old man tried to dissuade her. He told her about the long journey, the difficulty of the path, the need to approach the sparrows with respect and humility. But the old woman would not listen. Her mind was set, her greed a fire that consumed all other considerations. Finally, knowing he could not stop her, he told her how to find the valley. The next morning, before dawn had fully broken, the old woman set out. She carried no offerings, no gifts, no tokens of respect. Her mind was focused only on the treasure she was certain awaited her. She walked quickly, impatiently, barely noticing the beauty of the landscape through which she passed. Where the old man had moved with respect and humility, the old woman rushed forward with single-minded determination. Where he had taken weeks, calling out his search as he went, she arrived in less than a day, following his directions exactly. When she reached the valley, she did not stop to admire the cherry blossoms or listen to the birdsong. She marched straight to the house and called out in a loud, demanding voice, "Sparrow, Sparrow, come out here, I've come to visit." The door opened, and the sparrows appeared, taking their human-like forms. But where they had welcomed the old man with genuine joy, their reception of the old woman was polite, but reserved. They could see into her heart, could read the greed written there as clearly as if it were painted on a banner. But courtesy and hospitality were deeply ingrained in them, older than memory, stronger than personal feeling. They invited her inside and offered her tea and food. She gulped the tea without tasting it, ate the food without appreciating it, her eyes constantly roaming the room, looking for signs of treasure. Her behavior was graceless, her conversation full of false flattery and barely concealed impatience. The sparrows listened with patient faces, though sorrow moved in their eyes, like shadows of clouds passing across water. They did not keep her long. When she announced she must be leaving, they did not try to persuade her to stay. Instead, they brought forth the 2 baskets again, the light one and the heavy one. The old woman's eyes fixed immediately on the larger basket. "That one," she said, pointing. "I'll take that one." The sparrows exchanged glances, but said nothing. They helped her lift the heavy basket onto her back, tying it securely. It was so heavy, she staggered under its weight, but greed gave her strength. She barely said farewell before turning and hurrying away, bent under her burden, but already imagining the treasures she would find inside. She did not make it far before her impatience overwhelmed her. Perhaps halfway down the mountain, in a place where the path ran beside a cliff, she could wait no longer. Her fingers trembled as she untied the cords, pulled away the seals, lifted the lid. And then chaos erupted. Out of the basket poured not treasures but demons, Oni with red faces and sharp horns, Tengu with long noses and wild eyes, ghosts and goblins and spirits of mischief and malice, all the dark things that dwell in shadow. They swirled around the old woman like a terrible storm, pulling her hair, pinching her skin, making horrible faces and terrible sounds. She screamed and ran, dropping the basket, fleeing down the mountain path with the demons pursuing her, tormenting her at every step. They followed her all the way back to the village, all the way to her house, dissipating only when she collapsed, exhausted and terrified, on her own doorstep. The old man found her there, trembling and sobbing, covered in small bruises and scratches, her hair wild, her eyes wide with lingering fear. He helped her inside and listened as she told her story between gasps and shudders. He did not say, "I told you so," though he might have been justified in doing so. Instead, he brought her tea and sat with her until her trembling subsided, until the fear released its grip on her heart. In the days that followed, something changed in the old woman. Perhaps it was the shock of encountering the demons, or perhaps it was finally seeing the consequences of her greed and cruelty, made manifest in a way she could not ignore. But whatever the cause, she grew quieter, less sharp, more thoughtful. She began to listen when the old man spoke, began to notice the beauty of the world around her, the way sunlight fell through the shoji screens, the taste of tea carefully prepared, the sound of birds in the morning. As for the old man, he used the treasure from the light basket wisely. He repaired their house and ensured they had enough to eat. But he also shared the wealth with their neighbours, helping those in need, making donations to the local shrine and temple. And when it became clear that they had no children to inherit their good fortune, he and his wife adopted a young man from the village, someone who had been orphaned and alone, giving him a home and a family, passing on not just material wealth, but the lessons learned from sparrows and kindness, and the long journey to find what had been lost. The adopted son was hardworking and filial, treating them with respect and care. Under his stewardship, the household prospered. He married and had children of his own, filling the house with the sounds of young life, with laughter and play, and the kind of happy chaos that comes from love and family. The old man lived long enough to see his adopted grandchildren grow, to tell them stories of a time when he had befriended a sparrow and learned what true hospitality meant. He told them about the magic valley and the cherry blossoms, and the importance of kindness, even to the smallest and most vulnerable creatures. The children listened wide-eyed, and though they could not entirely understand everything he was saying, the stories sank into their hearts like seeds, waiting for the right season to grow. As for the old woman, she never fully lost the hardness that had taken root in her soul over the years, but it softened, became less sharp, less cutting. She learned to be grateful for what she had, to appreciate her husband's kindness rather than scorning it. And sometimes, in the evenings, when she sat watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of rose and amber, she would remember the demons that had poured from the basket, and she would shudder, but also feel oddly grateful for the lesson they had taught her, harsh though it had been. Years passed, and the seasons turned their endless wheel. Spring came with its cherry blossoms and new growth, summer with its heat and abundance, autumn with its harvest and cooling winds, winter with its snow and silence. Through it all, the old man remained gentle and kind, and his household prospered with a prosperity that came not just from the treasure, but from something deeper, from the wealth of right living, from the richness of relationships built on respect and care, from the abundance that flows from generosity rather than greed. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, the old man would walk to the edge of the village and look up toward the mountains, toward the place where the magic valley lay hidden. He would think of the sparrows there, of the family that had shown him such hospitality, of the young sparrow he had cared for, and who had, in turn, cared for him in ways he had never expected. And he would wonder if they remembered him, if they ever thought of the old man who had chosen the light basket, who had valued his own limitations over the temptation of greed. But of course they remembered, in that timeless valley, where cherry blossoms bloomed in eternal spring, where the stream sang its endless song, where spirits took the form of birds, and hospitality was the highest virtue, the sparrows remembered. They told the story to their children and their children's children, the tale of the kind old man who had cared for one of their own, who had searched tirelessly when that young one was lost, who had chosen humility over greed, and received the reward that only humility can claim. And perhaps, on certain nights when the moon was full, and the air was soft with approaching spring, a sparrow would fly from that valley to the village below, would perch on the roof of the old man's house, and would sing. Not with words, for its tongue was still cut, but with a voice that spoke of deeper things than words can express, speaking of gratitude and remembrance, and the invisible threads that connect all acts of kindness across time and space. weaving them into a pattern more beautiful than any treasure, more valuable than any basket filled with gold. The old man, hearing that song in his sleep, would smile without waking, and his dreams would be filled with cherry blossoms and clear streams, and the sound of wings on the wind, carrying him back to that place outside of time, where he had been welcomed and honoured and loved, for nothing more than the simple kindness of his heart. And so the story ends, as all stories must, but also continues, as all true stories do, continuing in the lessons learned, in the lives touched, in the small acts of kindness that ripple outward like circles on water, growing larger and larger, until they touch shores we cannot see, shaping a world we will never fully know, but which is made better, made gentler, made more beautiful by every gesture of compassion, every choice of humility over pride, every moment when we care for the small and vulnerable things that come into our lives seeking shelter. The night deepens, the moon rises higher, casting its silver light across the sleeping village. In the old man's house, all is peaceful. The fire in the hearth has burned down to embers, but their glow is warm and gentle, sufficient for now, sufficient always. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and joys, its own opportunities for kindness or cruelty, its own choices between the heavy basket and the light one. But for now, there is only this moment, this quiet, perfect moment, when everything that needs to be said has been said, when all debts have been repaid and all journeys completed, when the sparrows in their valley and the old man in his house both rest in the certainty that kindness is never wasted, that love is never lost, that every act of gentleness echoes forever through the chambers of the world. The story folds itself away like origami, like paper cranes, like wings tucked against a body in sleep. The words settle into silence. The silence deepens into peace. And peace, like snow falling on a winter night, covers everything in its soft, forgiving blanket, transforming all it touches into something pure and clean and new, ready for spring, ready for dawn, ready for the next story to begin.